Hey everyone, I wanted to take a chance to host one last discussion topic video right before the upcoming Digital Monster Hunter presentation that will finally be revealing all of the new goodies making their way into Sunbreak's third free title update. In this video, I want to try to tackle all of the upcoming monsters that we can expect to be showcased based on some pre-existing data that we have obtained, and I also want to go over all of the brand new features and quality of life changes that we are expecting to see as Capcom has continued to streamline the game and the experience for players, making this game more approachable than ever before. And of course, all of the surprises that we haven't necessarily been privy to officially, but of course, unofficially, we have a pretty good idea as to what they're gonna add since we have seen it in the game's files already. But before any of that, I certainly want to encourage all of you to let me know in the comments which monsters you want to see added in, but also which brand new feature or quality or life improvement you would love to see Capcom considering heading into the future. Remember that after each and every single one of these presentations, they just happen to drop a brand new questionnaires, hoping for players to let them know what they thought of the presentation itself, but also what brand new features they want to see added in heading into the future. And just to kind of showcase that Capcom has been listening to player feedback in those specific questionnaires, two of the most highly requested features in the past 2 months have already been confirmed for the third free title update. So certainly letting them know and obviously voicing your opinions out is the best way to get Capcom to notice what it is that you want to happen in changes going forward. So first and foremost, I do want to quickly discuss a little bit about the presentation itself. We do know, based on the official Japanese blog update, that the presentation will be about 12 minutes long. It will be hosted, of course, from Fiorane. There will be an official English translation as well. We did get confirmation from Capcom regarding that as well. We do know, of course, like most of their previous presentations, there will be some sort of trailer showcasing about 3 to 4 minutes of pretty much some of the main monsters that are going to be showcasing, and of course, some of the brand new features being added in. We're going to be discussing that in just a second. Also, after they explain some of those highly requested features that people have been asking for, of course, they're going to go over some of the things that are most likely going to end up getting lost in the patch notes themselves, which we don't have access to as of right now, but we can expect a few changes already heading in. So as far as features and quality of life improvements, Capcom has already confirmed the 4, but we know of 2 more as well. First and foremost, we know that weapon buffs and weapon adjustments, specifically when it comes to the gun lance, is some of the featured weapons that the developers have already delved deep into and they have already discussed a little bit on. Of course, the shelling and stuff like that is one of the changes, but we do know that other weapons are also going to receive some sort of brand new changes based on the Curious Crafting. So Curious Crafting is kind of like the tool that developers are going to start to using heading forward to kind of like balance out or make more weapons a little bit more viable. This is both to make some weapons a bit more intricate since they're not necessarily viable in endgame hunts and specifically in anomaly investigations. One of the things players have complained about recently is the fact that almost every single weapon has about 6 to 7 really viable anomaly investigation weapons, mostly element based, but then after that, every other weapon kind of like falls by the wayside. So one of the things that Capcom is trying to do is through the Curious Crafting, make more weapons viable. That doesn't mean everyone is going to be viable, but if like they double that number from 6 to 12, that is a start. Another subtle change that's also making its way into the third free title update is the fact that we now know that 10 slotted options from Curious Crafting will be added in. This is going to be just buffing and providing new possibilities for enhancement damage options. So remember that also new materials will be required for you to be able to craft any of these new slotted for the Curious Crafting, which we'll be discussing as we discuss brand new anomaly investigation monsters as well. The second major quality of life improvement being added in is to the anomaly investigations themselves, where essentially any quest that you have, most likely at around 120 or so, this would be the level cap, you can now adjust the anomaly investigation level to the lowest possible level any monster might actually have. So like Malzeno, for example, lowest level can do is like 51. So you can actually get like the lowest anomaly investigation materials for Malzeno, even though you have a 120 quest, you can adjust that to 51. Other monsters like, Graded Sushi, for example, if you have a 120 Graded Sushi quest, but you want to do a level 1 version of that same quest, you can adjust it all the way down to that level. So that is one of the changes that they're going to give you for you to be able to have the best quest available with the best different parameters, but also you can adjust it for the level so you can be able to get the best rewards for that specific quest level as well. The second change to this one is also the fact that you can now trade in any type of amber essences when you're doing curious crafting and get lesser quality amber essences back when doing the required curious crafting rerolls for any one of your armors. If you're trying to get like the best decorations rolls, or if you're looking for like a specific skill to be raised through the RNG and armor rolls for curious crafting. Most people have reported that they're doing the cap level 120 investigation hunts and they're basically full of prime amber essences, but they don't have any of the lower tier ones. So now you're going to be able to get some of those in return if for whatever armor you're crafting during curious crafting form doesn't necessarily require 40 points, you're going to get either 20 or 10 points back. Therefore, you get those lower amber essences materials, and you get to keep some of those for whatever future armor sets you want to craft going forward. Lastly, the fourth quality of life improvement that we know is also coming is that the followers are getting some much needed changes. You'll be able to tell them basically when to wyvern ride, when to flash bomb, when to do sonic bombs, when to drop traps. Any of these changes are welcome. All of these will be toggleable through the options menu, and basically you can tailor their gameplay a little bit more. Some people have suggested that if you simply want to have like the damage dealing types like Master Tsushi or the Village Chief, focusing more on DPS, you can simply just toggle all of these options off and they're just going to focus on damage continually. So we're going to have to wait and see just how testing turns out, if they're going to be like more viable than before when it comes to damage, but that is going to be one of those possibilities that you can make them focus on damage and not necessarily on anything else. Now transitioning over to the brand new addition of Anomaly 7-star monsters. This is something that we have talked about before. I made a video where I discussed a little bit about that already, but we have a couple of more additions that we simply didn't know at the time. Remember that a patch did drop late last month, so a couple of brand new changes have been added in that we simply just didn't get a chance to talk to at the time. We do know that the level cap will be adjusted to level 200 at the end of the day, but we don't know if this specific change is going to be dropping for this specific free title update. Some people have suggested that Capcom could do a staggered release, so they could raise the cap from 120 from Anomaly Investigations to 140 or to 150, and then on the next patch, that would be the one that we're going to get in early 2023, they ended up raising it to 200. Of course, that's just speculation, but as of right now, we do know that the level cap for Anomaly Investigations is going to be 200, so that could actually be a possibility for this free title update. Alongside that, 7-star Anomaly Investigation monsters are also going to be part of that as well. We know that we have confirmation of 4 of those monsters making their way in: Silver Rathalos, Gold Rathian, Furious Rajang, and Scorn Magnamalo. These are pretty much guaranteed 100%. However, there's 2 other ones that are kind of like highly suggested, but we don't necessarily have seen anything on the games file so far that suggests that they might specifically be part of this first wave if they are going to do a staggered release for 7-star Anomaly Investigation monsters. So we can expect Seething Bazelgeuse and Flaming Espinas to also make their way as 7-star Anomaly monsters, but as of right now, it's still kind of like weird. We don't necessarily know. I don't want to say they're confirmed like the first 4. We're just going to have to wait and see if they do end up adding them in, and if they do raise the level cap to 200. If they do, then we should be able to see 6 monsters at the very least make their way as the first set of Anomaly Investigation 7-star monsters. With that said though, there are 2 other expected monsters to be part of this, but as of right now, we basically have no real confirmation on that. Everything does line up that they should be able to be added in, but we just don't necessarily know so far. They could be part of the set for the first wave if Capcom decides to do a staggered release, but of course, we're not too sure. Those monsters will be Violet Mitsuzune and Lucent Nargacuga. As of right now, how things stand, it seems unlikely that they're part of 7-star Anomaly base quest right out of the gate, but simply put, these monsters only ever appear in Arena Quest. They do not appear anywhere else in any of the other normal maps. Every other monster so far does appear in like normal quests and normal maps, so that is kind of like the one signifier. If Capcom does decide to add in some sort of quest, let's say an event quest where you can hunt a Violet Mitsuzune or a Lucent Nargacuga, and let's say the Shrine Ruins, for example, then all of a sudden these monsters are now viable for 7-star Anomaly quests. But until that happens, this seems rather unlikely. So that is the one qualifier we do have there. I do want to make that very clear. So now, as far as actual brand new monsters go, we have seen a couple of changes become a bit more clear since the original video that I made about 2 months ago, when I originally spoke about 8 or 10 or so monsters that were going to be found in the game's files themselves, some which could potentially be part of the third free title update. I will make this very clear. We still don't know which of these 8 to 10 monsters will be part of this specific update. We can surmise, and again, that's just speculation, realistically speaking, that some of them will be part of this specific update, but others obviously will be just withheld for future updates. So simply put, this isn't a question of if, but more like when. And before we begin, I won't necessarily go into all of the details here since I already made a rather extensive video breaking down all of the details there, so I'm going to leave a link in the description below on how placeholders work and how we came about figuring out which one of the monsters the data actually suggests will be appearing. So if you watched that video already, you kind of have a little bit of a heads up. If you didn't necessarily watch it, the long and short of it is there's an official Capcom list of every single monster that's been part of the series pretty much since the beginning of time, and each monster has an ID. These slots, or basically placeholders, are now open basically on the game's files, are directly positioned between previous named monsters or brand new monsters. Therefore, we can infer that a brand new species or a brand new subspecies, a variant, a rare species, whatever it might be, will end up getting added in based on the last fixed monster in that list. So that's usually how that works. Again, I made a video, I explained all that, so I don't really want to get into that here. So first and foremost, one of the first free title update 3 monsters that I think we can easily write off the list is of course Chaotic Gore Magala. This one has been expected for being specifically part of this patch pretty much for like 4 months now. This is one of like the monsters we have been expecting from being specifically for the third free title update for quite a while. So if you have kind of been watching my videos in the past, you kind of already know that Chaotic Gore Magala is one of the monsters that we have been expecting for quite a while. However, there are 4 risen monsters that we can also expect to drop. As to which ones and when, of course, again, we don't necessarily know. When it comes to risen monsters, we know that Risen Teostra and Risen Kushala Daora are going to round out the, let's say, Elder Dragons, like a Risen version trio, right? So we have Risen Chameleos and Risen Teostra and Risen Kushala Daora are simply just going to end up getting added in. A lot of people have expected or suggested that Kushala Daora might actually end up being the one added in. It could be Teostra. We don't know. Presumably, one of these are going to be making their way into this specific title update. So we can slot one of them in, whichever one, Teostra or Kushala Daora, as part of Chaotic Gore Magala's addition to the third free title update. At the same time, we also know that there's going to be a Risen Shagaru Magala and a Risen Valstrax. So before I talk about Valstrax, I do want to make it very clear that Shagaru Magala's Risen version will not be part of this patch. We do know that simply because it just doesn't get slotted in as of right now. It just doesn't line up properly. So Teostra and Kushala Daora have to come in first before Shagaru Magala, and we don't expect them to do Risen Teostra and Kushala Daora back to back. We would expect them to do a staggered one. So they do Risen Teostra, for example, now, and then they do the next update, Kushala Daora. So that's how they would actually work it out. So Shagaru Magala will most likely come in the next update, but not this one. Now, when it comes to Valstrax, Risen Valstrax, we still don't necessarily know which version of Valstrax we are talking about. Some in the files have suggested that it's just base Valstrax, so this would be the one in Generations Ultimate, but it could also be, of course, Risen Crimson Glow Valstrax. We don't necessarily know which one will be added in right now, but I'm pretty sure that the patch changes will give us a better idea, for the next patch update, essentially. So once that gets cleared up, we'll have a pretty good idea. So as of right now, that's the 4 Risen monsters that we can expect. Obviously, that's a lot of Risen monsters that are like not necessarily brand new, but they are brand new versions of somewhat fan favorite monsters. So whether people are going to be happy about that or not, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, the next monster that I'm going to talk about here is one of the ones that I actually expect to be part of this specific free title update, and that is a brand new Malzeno monster. Whether it is a brand new subspecies, a brand new variant, a brand new rare species, that's still up in the air. We don't have a direct confirmation on that, but we do know for sure that it's not a Risen monster. This just simply doesn't line up relatively well. So we do expect there to be, at the very least, a brand new variant of Malzeno. Lines up very well since Gore and Magnamalo ended up getting a variant version. Essentially, Scorn Magnamalo was like the original Magnamalo from the Komura Village Rampage from like 50 years ago, and then it came back to like hunt once again. So we probably can expect that story-wise or lore-wise, they say, hey, the Malzeno you took down is actually not really dead, and it came back to like haunt. And now this is a brand new variant of that same original Malzeno. So expect this one to be Pirate Malzeno is what I'm actually trying to say. Now, the roadmap itself does line up relatively well for there to be another Malzeno being added in specifically for this spot. Also, it does suggest that it will be in the Citadel, whatever monster that they're going to feature. And of course, the Citadel featured Malzeno. That is his home. So, of course, that's why I suggest that this one is probably going to be part of this update. We don't have confirmation, but if I had to put money on it, this brand new Malzeno will be part of this specific update with Chaotic Gore Magala and either Risen Kushala the Aura or Risen Teostra. Either one, that will most likely end up being the 3 monsters that we get. That is what I'm expecting there to be, just 3 monsters. If we get more than that, of course, that'll be great. But if I had to put money on it, those are the 3 that we can expect. Either Teostra Kushala the Aura, a brand new Malzeno, and of course, Chaotic Gore Magala. Now, as far as new monsters, it doesn't necessarily end there, because like I mentioned before, we have maybe potentially 8 to 10 monsters being added in as part of the 3rd, 4th, and maybe even 5th free title update. So we do know that at the very least, the next 2 to 4 monsters, it could be either or, we don't necessarily know. Any of these 2 to 4 monsters could potentially be one or the other, or it could be both. The files are simply just incomplete, so we don't necessarily have a direct confirmation of which one it could potentially be. As far as placeholders go, we do know that a brand new Zinogre is currently something that we can expect. Also, at the same time, a brand new or an original Amatsu could be added in. Now, the thing about Amatsu, and before I even talk about Zinogre, I do want to quickly mention that the thing about Amatsu is that it appears as a brand new version of it. So a brand new variant, a brand new rare version, or basically something new, a different Amatsu. It doesn't necessarily seem to be like it's going to be the original Amatsu that we saw in like Generations Ultimate, for example. So this probably will end up being some sort of, if they take the same like Crimson Gold Valstrax approach, but for Amatsu, that could end up being something that we can expect. Specifically when it comes to Zinogre, it's not any of the currently available Zinogres that we have seen, like Stygian Zinogre or stuff like that. That is not what I'm talking about. This is literally a brand new type of Zinogre. Some people have expected it to be maybe like a Risen Zinogre or something like that, but it doesn't necessarily line up since there's already an Afflicted Investigation version of Zinogre and an Apex version. So Zinogre will get some sort of new form, some sort of new subspecies, rare variant, whatever, but we don't necessarily know as to which one it could possibly be. That is like the real toss up here. It could be Zinogre, it could be Amatsu. Placeholder just suggests one or both. We don't necessarily know. And finally, the last either or placeholder position spot that we can talk about as of right now is simply put the returning of a monster of Iceborne. And basically any brand new monster that was available in Iceborne is something that we can expect here. I want to make this very clear. We're not discussing such species made available in Iceborne or even any sort of returning monsters. We're talking about a brand new monster never seen before in the series that appeared first in Iceborne. So some people have, of course, automatically suggested Namiel and Volcana. These were the 2 original monsters that were instantly suggested by people that it could be the placeholder that we are expecting to see. But of course, you got to remember that Safi Jiva or Safi Jiva, I'm not sure which way it's actually pronounced, that was also a brand new monster in Iceborne. And let's not forget that Shara Ishvalda was also a brand new monster in Iceborne. So originally, a lot of people suggested that it could be Namiel or Volcana, but then when you really start to think about it, Safi and Shara could potentially be making their way in there as well. Now, the real difference here is that, of course, Safi Jiva does have the secluded valley. That is where it was originally fought. That means a brand new arena, a brand new habitat. The same thing can be said about Shara Ishvalda. It did have the origin isle as well. So if you had to kind of remove any of the 4 possibilities there, Safi and Shara would be removed since they do require their very own unique arena, where Namiel and Volcana only appeared pretty much in any of the normal maps. It could appear, I think Volcana appeared in just about every single one of the maps, and Namiel appeared in the Coral Highlands and Guiding Lands. So it did have that freedom to be able to move around. Again, wherever these monsters appear, it does play a big role, because ultimately it means that Capcom has to make a brand new arena or port over that original arena into Sunbreak, and it's just extra work. So if they could avoid that by just giving people Volcano or Namiel, and they don't have to do a brand new arena or port over the arena from the original Iceborne version, you know, they're just saving manpower and hours of production. At the same time, I will also mention that any of these versions of these monsters that we do end up getting here, Namiel, Volcana, Safi, or Shara, they will be the last monster based on where they're actually located in the game's file so far. This will be the last free title update monster that we see. So we don't expect this one to be part of free title update number 3. It will most likely end up being like the last monster added in for the final whatever update that will be, either early 2023, the 4th update, or the 5th one if we do end up getting one late 2023, right before Capcom go ahead and reveals Monster Hunter World 2, which of course we're expecting that to happen at some point next year. But that's pretty much it. Sorry that this was a relatively long video, but I wanted to make it extremely thorough and go over pretty much everything that we know so far that could potentially be part of free title update based on the actual games files, based on some actual information that we have ahead of time, and of course some of the things Capcom have said themselves. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.